Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. I'm Brandon Ware. You're watching Angel 65, my channel for all things music related, both music reviews and music posts. I'm continuing my series discussing my deep dive back into the King Crimson catalog. So to discuss where we've been so far, I started in August with the condensed 21st Century Guide to King Crimson Volume 1 and 2, two 4-CD overviews of the periods between 69 and 74, and then 81 to 2003, including live and studio material. Then I listened to the complete 1969 recordings box set, including the Court of the Crimson King, all of the various album mixes, the complete recording sessions, and all of the available live material from the original King Crimson band. Then I took a long break between then and October now, where this past few days I have gone through the 1969 to 1972 and 1972 to 1974 vinyl box sets, including the Steven Wilson remixes of all of the studio albums from that period, as well as some additional material exclusive to the box sets on vinyl. And finally, these last 3 days, I have gone through each of these, covering the period Fripp refers to as the Interregnum, which is the 40th anniversary series CD, DVD, A versions of In the Wake of Poseidon, Lizard Islands, and Earthbound. Now, the reason I can have these as opposed to the Sailor's Tale box set, which covers the same period and includes everything that's on those sets, is for two reasons. Number one, the Sailor's Tale box set is really hard to find at a reasonable price, I found. It's a collector's item that's not in print. None of the boxes are in print anymore, and that one has just been particularly elusive to me. And additionally, I'm not necessarily willing to fork over collector's prices for it, because of the entire King Crimson history, this period between 1970 and 1972 is probably my least favorite. Not that there isn't cool stuff there that's still important to the overall history of the band, but I find that it's sort of a band finding its feet after the triumph of the first lineup that subsequently dissolved, and it's just a band that's trying to find its feet and rediscover its style and reinvent itself in the period between that first lineup and then the official, like, 70s classic band of Cross, Fripp, Wetton, and Bruford. So this is the period in between. So this is why I've stuck with just the CD, DVD editions of each, because you still get the remixes in stereo and in 5.1. And you get a decent amount of extra material with each of these individual releases, which still gives you a good insight into that period of the band without going completely in depth, which is what the Sailor's Tales box set does. If I ever see it for a reasonably low price, I would probably pick it up just to have it and then sell these off. But as is, I'm happy with having them as they are right now, because I still feel like they give a good overview of this period and include material that's worth exploring. So we'll start at the beginning with In the Wake of Poseidon. So this CD, DVD, we get the front cover. All of the releases in this series follow the same general form factor, where they have the front cover with a little box on the side, the title in a box on the outer spine, and then it just says 40th Anniversary Edition on the top and bottom of the outer slipcase. On the back, we get the CD track list, as well as a list of DVD contents and all of the different audio tracks that are on the DVD. Then the inner box reproduces the original gatefold sleeve, both inside and out. The CD has the front cover, and of course there's the original left panel of the gatefold inside, and then the DVD has the back cover, and there's the right panel of the original gatefold inside. Then we get a 16-page booklet, which again reproduces the gatefold artwork. And on the inside, we get basically an abbreviated version of what would have been in the full-size box set. So we get some pictures, we get the CD track list, all of the contents of the DVD, the credits, and some small notes by Sid Smith. So not as extensive as what would be in the full outer size box set, but it's still a good representation of the period and gives you some information to whet your appetite, as it were. And in terms of what's actually on here, so the CD contains the original stereo mix, the new stereo mix, as well as 3 bonus tracks, including the new mix of Groon, Peace and End, and Cadence and Cascade with Greg Lake singing, all of which are on that alternative guide to King Crimson vinyl in the 69 to 72 vinyl box set discussed in the previous video. The lineup for this album, we have Robert Fripp, who is, of course, the mainstay with guitar, and he's taken over Mellotron by this point. Greg Lake is just singing. Peter Giles, which is Mike Giles' brother, is playing bass. Michael Giles is still on drums, even though he's officially left the band by this point. Keith Tippett is on piano. Mel Collins is on saxes and flute. Gordon Haskell provides the vocal on Cadence and Cascade. And then Pete Sinfield is credited with words. He's the official creative partner of Robert Fripp at this point. So what's on the DVD? We get the 5.1 mix. The Devil's Triangle, as discussed in the previous video, is just up-mixed from stereo. All they have to work with is the original stereo master tape. The multi-tracks remain missing. We get the new stereo mix, which again, of course, has just the normal stereo mix of Devil's Triangle. The original mix, can't remix it. We get the 30th anniversary remaster of the original mix. And then we get a selection of bonus tracks, including the single version of Cat Food, which is on that alternative guide vinyl. Groon, the original mix, not the Steven Wilson remix. And then we get 3 different versions of Cadence and Cascade. We get the unedited master, so it has some additional solos that were not, they were edited out of the master track. We get the Greg Lake vocal version, and then we get an instrumental take from Wessex. We get 3 different takes of Groon, which are all just different in the way they do the improvisation in the middle. We get a rehearsal of the Devil's Triangle, which has like bouts of silence in it as it moves from the individual sections, and then we get the same alternate mix of Peace and End that again was on that alternative guide vinyl. So that's everything that's on here. Overall, the 5.1 mix is, of course, awesome. I really enjoy the 5.1 mix. I think it brings a lot out of it. Even the Devil's Triangle, they did a good job of, they did a convincing job of making it sound surround sound, even though it's really just upmixed stereo, so it's not as immersive and discreet sounding as the other 7 tracks on the album, but it works. The new stereo mix, I didn't bother listening to that again because I just heard it on the vinyl not that long ago. I did listen to the original master edition though, and it is, it's honestly, this one hasn't changed that much between the remix and the original mix. It's just a little clearer, almost like a layer of dust has been wiped off the master tape and it's just a little bit clearer. So not too many big EQ or positioning changes, anything like that. It's relatively faithful mix, just clearer and perhaps a little more power and punch to it. So I like the remix, but the original sounded fine. We get Groon, of course, remixed in stereo and in 5.1. The 5.1 mix of this was interesting because it kind of places the drums behind you and the mellotron and guitar and saxes are kind of in a circle around you, but all of the drums are like sort of pushed to the back of the sound field, which is interesting, but it leaves a lot of space open for particularly Greg Lake's vocal. And that's the thing that makes this album the most interesting, is a lot of people, the Crimson have acknowledged this, have like claimed that it's too similar to the first album, and that's not an unfair assessment based on how similar side 1 is particular, just in terms of its dynamics and the type of compositions. It's very related to side 1 of In the Court of the Crimson King. But what you do get to appreciate here is Greg Lake's voice and just understanding what a loss it was when he decided to leave for Emerson, Lake and Palmer. It's understandable why he did. If he had stayed with Fripp, he would have not had as much of a creative role as he did in ELP, although Keith Emerson still probably dominated in that band, but that's okay. But you do just get to appreciate what an amazing singer he is. And having the alternate take of Cadence and Cascade with him singing is fascinating. I'm not sure why they decided to put Gordon Haskell on there instead. I don't know. I don't think he had officially joined the band at that point, so I guess perhaps they just liked it better at the time. Personally, I prefer Greg Lake's singing. He does it more subdued and less whispery than Gordon Haskell. So overall, I prefer Greg Lake singing, and I am going to state right here that other than Adrian Belew, I think Greg Lake is the best singer Crimson ever had. He has such an amazing, unique voice. It's a shame that he didn't stick around, but again, also completely understandable why. So this relates to what I was saying earlier about King Crimson kind of floundering for the next couple albums, trying to find a new style that works for them and the players that were available at the time. Because without Greg Lake, Michael Giles, and certainly without Ian McDonald, who was compositionally more in charge on the first album, King Crimson became a very different animal than it was before. And they would do some great stuff, and they would do some not so great stuff. So overall, this is a good release. I like that the 5.1 mix opens it up a little bit more. Sounds great, and the extra tracks are interesting. They don't provide too much insight as to what it was like to record it, but definitely nice to have the alternate takes of Cadence and Cascade in particular, and the rehearsal version of Devil's Triangle is interesting. It's actually not that far off of what the song did eventually become. So there's that one. Then we're on to the next chapter, which is Lizard. I said in the previous video how much I like the sleeve and how I don't think the CD version does justice to it. It's the gold doesn't come across as like stamped as and glittery as it does on the LP jacket, and everything is just smaller, so it's a lot less detailed. Of the series, except for Thrak, which I had and eventually sold, because I have the Thrak box, which we'll get to, and who knows when. We've got a lot of material to cover before we get there, but this, other than that, which had no bonus tracks, this has the least amount of bonus tracks of any release in this 40th anniversary CD DVD series. It's only got 3 bonus tracks plus an original new stereo and 5.1 mix of the album. And so same general form factor with the track list and audio formats on the back. And then we get the gatefold artwork reproduced, the lyrics inside, front cover, back cover for the CD and DVD, and then the booklet. So this period of the band, so Mel Collins has officially joined. Fripp and Sinfield are still in complete control creatively. And then we have Andy McCulloch on drums, Gordon Haskell singing on all of it except Prince Rupert Awakes, which John Anderson sings on. And then we have members of Keith Tippett's band performing on this. We have Keith Tippett himself on piano, Nick Evans on trombone, Mark Shawrig on cornet, and Robin Miller on oboe and cor anglius. Very, very strange album. I expected to like it a lot more than I did when I first discovered this. I thought, oh, a 23-minute epic. Usually I like it when bands do the big multi-part thing. Problem is that the reason it's so long is just because there's a lot of superfluous, I will go that far and use that word, superfluous and over-the-top soloing. Very much free jazz inspired with everybody soloing at once, but it doesn't have the unanimity aspect of the later 70s improvs with the Crossfrip, Wet and Bruford band, because it just sounds like they're all playing on top of each other and not really listening. I will say the 5.1 mix of this is probably the one that deserved it the most, because in 5.1, I won't say it makes it sound any more cohesive. I mean, especially the last skirmish section, it doesn't really make it sound any more cohesive. It still sounds like a big jumble of sound, people that are not listening to each other, if I'm being completely honest. But the fact that it's more spaced out and there's different instruments from each speaker means you can kind of focus on what each individual player is doing a little bit more than you can in just the stereo mix. Though the stereo mix too clears it up a lot. I did not re-listen to the stereo mix because I heard it on vinyl. I did listen to the original stereo mix, which when you do compare the original stereo mix to the new 5.1, it is astonishing how much clearer and more open the new 5.1 is, and how the separation of the instruments makes it more of a rewarding listening experience. But overall, still not an album I am particularly fond of. I'm not a big fan of Gordon Haskell singing. It's not that he does a bad job, I just don't think his voice is that... It just doesn't have that much character to it, if I'm being completely honest. And the lyrics, this is where Pete Sinfield's lyrics start to really get out there and just get a little bit more ridiculous. I mean, they experimented with humor on the previous album with Cat Food. That one still has a simplicity to it that makes it actually funny, whereas this is a lot more over the top and just not as enjoyable. But we do have Circus. I like that song, and it's been revived by the most recent King Crimson band. Indoor Games is kind of ridiculous, again, with the VCS3. Happy Family, which is about the Beatles, so I guess in that sense it's kind of funny, but again, the lyrics just get so out there and unrelatable that it makes it sound like it's not about the Beatles. It could be about anybody. It's just kind of ridiculous. And the one like high spot of side A, other than Circus, is Lady of the Dancing Water. That actually has a lyric which works, and the performance is nice and serene. And then of course the B side is the Lizard Suite, with which Prince Rupert Awakes, which has got to be one of the dumbest, most unenjoyable lyrics that Pete Sinfield has ever wrote. I don't care what kind of imagery he was trying to invoke. To me, it just does not work. I do not like it. In fact, John Anderson singing it almost makes it more ridiculous, because John Anderson has a beautiful voice that shouldn't be wasted on stuff this ridiculous. Same reason I'm not a big fan of Don't Kill the Whale by Yes. It's just like, you have a great voice, man. Sing stuff that matters. I'm probably irritating a lot of people there, but I'm just being honest about how I feel about it. You do get the one high spot, which is Bolero. That's a great moment, even though there's still a lot of nonsense soloing in it. And then the Battle of Glass Tears with the last skirmish section, which is too much. And then you get Prince Rupert's Lament, which is actually really cool, and you get this more atmospheric kind of guitar sound, sort of like the stuff he would start to do with Brian Eno and eventually with Crimson in the next lineup. So you do get a little glimpse of what's going to happen next with Prince Rupert's Lament, which is a good almost ending to the piece. Then you get Big Top, which is interesting in terms of this set, because on the stereo and 5.1 remixes, on the DVD it's just the same title with 3 different audio soundtracks, and it actually there's a big gap of silence at the end of Big Top in the original stereo mix. Reason being is they did not recreate the pitch shift effect which the original mix has, where the little soundscape gets higher and higher in pitch as it fades out. I'm sure they couldn't reproduce that digitally, because I'm guessing they just did that by sticking their finger in the tape machine and speeding it up on the playback. They couldn't recreate that digitally. So the new stereo and 5.1 mixes actually just has the whole piece in the same key the entire time, and it just does a little circle around you and then fades away, but it doesn't raise in pitch. So that's interesting. That's one rather dramatic change between the original and new mix, I would say. A little bit unexpected, but again, it doesn't necessarily bother me. It doesn't upset me. And so I'm fine just having the new stereo mix on vinyl. And the 5.1 mix, like I said, of all the albums, this probably benefited the most from a 5.1 mix. This and Thrack and Lark's Tongues and Aspects probably were the 3 albums in the Crimson catalog that had just the most dense stuff going on. So having it spaced out and a little more room for each instrument to breathe around you definitely does add something to the listening experience. So whether or not you're a fan of this album, I would recommend you pick this up and check out the 5.1 mix, just because it does provide maybe a little more closely an experience to what was originally intended, but it's still not a favorite Crimson album. It's my least favorite, in fact. I'm not a big fan of Lizard. If you are, that's great. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments. I certainly don't hate it. I didn't despise listening to it or anything, but it just, compared to what was to come, you can tell that this is a band that is very much struggling to find an identity. And it didn't keep that identity for very long, because McCulloch and Haskell were out by the end before the record was even released even. So once again, King Crimson was kept off the road until Boz Burrell joined on vocals, and Fripp taught him how to play bass. And then Ian Wallace joined on drums. So when those 2 members joined, they finally had a lineup after a year and a half of searching that could go play live again. And what did they do? Well, they made this album, Islands, which, again, not a favorite album, but it has much better moments on it than Lizard. It is overall more focused and has just better compositions on it. And I guess I prefer Boz's singing to Gordon Haskell, but Boz is certainly not like an amazing singer either. It's interesting to think what could have happened had he stayed with King Crimson, but well, he joined a band with Paul Rodgers and didn't sing anymore. So that tells you something about his singing ability. um, Maybe it's not fair to compare him to Paul Rodgers, because Paul Rodgers is one of the best rock singers of all time. But you know what I mean. And we got this inside, outside, sleeve, etc. booklet with informations. We get the new stereo mix. On the DVD, we get the new stereo mix, the original stereo mix, the 5.1 mix, and this has the most extra material of all the studio albums from this period on the DVD. So we get an entire alternate album. Some of those tracks were on the whatchamacallit, Alternative Guide to King Crimson vinyl. We get Routes to Islands, which is very interesting. I'll go track by track here. So we get Pictures of a City, which is an rehearsal by the lineup. Sailor's Tale, rehearsal. Islands, Fragment, Reference, cassette, Mellotron on vibe setting. So just the Mellotron on the vibe setting, playing the main melody from Islands. Formentera Lady, rough mix. Sailor's Tale, rough mix. Drop In, early rehearsal by Islands lineup. So the original lyrics were Drop In, which was a Giles and Fripp piece, and then the first King Crimson performed it, which eventually morphed into The Letters, which is the next track. We get The Letters live at Plymouth, and we get Sailor's Tale live at the Zoom Club. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of The Letters. I really think I preferred it when it was Drop In. I thought the lyrics were cooler. I thought the kind of jazzy vibe that the Giles and Fripp version has is actually way cooler than this just nonsense mess of sound that the King Crimson band did. I really don't like it. I don't like it when this band does it. I didn't like it when the new band did it. I really just do not like The Letters. One of my least favorite King Crimson tracks, and I just do not like the lyrics. I do not like the big crazy jazz improv section in the middle. Sorry if you do. That's fine. We can agree to disagree on that one. Don't care for it. Probably one of my least favorite moments in King Crimson history, because they took a beautiful melody and turned it into a mess, if you ask me. Anyway, last set of bonus tracks on this. It's called Assorted Ladies. So we get the Robert Fripp and David Singleton remix of Ladies of the Road, which is cool. I like that. You get an alternate take of Ladies of the Road, and then 3 alternate takes of Formentera Lady, which is just the opening section before the first chorus section. My thoughts on the album itself. Formentera Lady, it's okay. I don't dislike it. I like the ending of it with Paulina Lucas doing her soprano on it. I really enjoy that little vocal solo. And the string bass, which opens it, which is Harry Miller. Really cool. Not a great moment. I think it goes on way too long. Again, lyrics, not that cool. Sailor's Tale, though. That is the best track across any of these 3 studio albums, which I'm discussing right now. Sailor's Tale is really the track that points the way forward to where King Crimson were going. And the guitar solo, the chords, it's chaos, but it's controlled chaos, and it's just fantastic. One of the coolest tracks that King Crimson ever did. I really, really, really enjoy that. I do think that is the standout track on the album. The Letters, already talked about it, don't like it. Ladies of the Road, I think the chorus is stupid, but the verse lyrics, like the humor in the verse lyrics actually works, and I think Boz actually does a good job of delivering the humorous side of it. And I love the sax solo. It's just so brazen and kind of ridiculous, but I think it's meant to be that. So I do like the sax solo in that. Prelude, Song of the Gulls, which is fantastic. Beautiful orchestral piece written by Fripp. He doesn't perform on it at all. It's just strings, and it sounds amazing. I love the pizzicato, plucked notes, and then just the long... it's great. I like that a lot. And then we close with the title track, Islands, which, again, the lyrics are decent. They work. Boz's performance is cool, but the real standout moment is at the end with Mark Scharig's cornet solo. Really, really, really like that, and the way it fades out. And then, of course, there's a brief gap of silence, and you get the little tune-up section where they prepare for Song of the Gulls, and then it just ends abruptly, as would become commonplace with King Crimson, which we would learn. Yeah, so overall, Islands, a little bit better than Lizard as an album. Still don't like it that much. Do love Sailor's Tale. Sailor's Tale is the reason to buy the album, and in 5.1 it just sounds fantastic. I mean, particularly when they come out of the guitar solo and you get the big bass pedal VCS3 note. That's just so powerful. Hits you right in the chest. Great 5.1 mix of that. Great 5.1 mix of the whole album. Just in general, not my favorite Crimson album. It's okay. I like it more than Lizard. And I think, I don't know. I don't know if I would go as far as to say it's underrated. I feel like it's rated about where it should be. It's not a classic Crimson album, in my opinion. And neither is this, Earthbound. I actually do not own this on vinyl or any other version except here. So, this album, Atlantic refused to release it in the US due to how bad it sounds. I mean, some of the soundboard cassettes on this sound worse than the bootleg material on the complete 69 recordings box set. The sound quality really is atrocious, but in a way that kind of adds a little bit of romance to it. So this is just a DVD, not a DVD audio. Everything is in standard DVD format on this. And what do you get? So you get the original track list. On the CD, there's 3 bonus tracks. On the DVD, you get those 3 plus an additional 2, plus the full extended version of Sailor's Tale and Groon Extended, which is really the jam that Peoria came from. So you get that full track with the jam in the middle. So you get a 12-track extended sequence. You get Schizoid Men, which is, I guess, the second disc of Ladies of the Road, a compilation I don't own, but the second disc is Schizoid Men, which is a fantastic idea that I would say was kind of poorly executed. It's basically all of a collection of 11 different improvs from the Schizoid Men, so the guitar and sax solos. It's just a flowing compilation of all of them, which I really thought was a cool idea, and it's interesting to hear how the solos changed on different nights. What I don't like is that in the middle of part 11, it just ends abruptly and then comes back in with more solos and then again ends. It never recapitulates the end of 21st Century Schizoid Man. It would have been cool if they had the intro, big compilation of solos in the middle, and then actually go back to the song and end it properly rather than just end abruptly. It kind of defeats the purpose of the whole thing to me. It's just a compilation of improvs that never goes anywhere because it can't go anywhere. It just ends. That I disliked a lot, but I did think it was cool to have all the things stretched back to back. It's a little bit tough to listen to it in one sitting, but it's cool. Original vinyl transfer of the 5-track original album, which I did listen to because I don't have it on vinyl, so I figured it was worth checking it out. Definitely much poorer quality than the new remaster with the extended tracks. And then the most interesting thing on this, the reason you buy this, the real buying point here is Live at Summit Studios, which is here in Denver, right where I am. So I guess it was interesting for that reason. But you get a new stereo mix and the quad mix, which is fantastic. I really, really enjoyed listening to that quad mix. It was very powerful. It wasn't done like a traditional live album mix where it's just audience behind you, everything's in front. They did space the instruments out to make it truly immersive, and you still have what seemed like it was a very small studio audience in the background. And what's interesting is the whole performance just keeps going, even though the radio broadcast ends. It kind of sounds like the host is just waiting to get them out of there. So they do like an hour with 3 potential endings to the set. And then they come back for a 35-minute jam on The Creator Has a Master Plan. And it really is just a jam. I said that before. This is a jam band. This is not a truly improvising band. The booklet says that as well. Apparently Ian Wallace took offense to that when Robert stated it that way, but I'm sorry. Robert Fripp is 100% correct. This is a jam band. This is not an improvising band because they are just like picking a mode or a chord or two and just jamming on top of it. They go into some 12-bar stuff in that long Creator Has a Master Plan jam, but they're not actually like group improvising the way the next band and pretty much all future Crimson bands would. This is a jam band, and it's fine. They do a decent job of that. It's just that territory has already been covered by countless other artists from the period that do it with arguably more power, even though you could argue that these are better musicians. I mean, certainly Collins and Fripp are fantastic musicians. Bosborough is he holds his own on bass, even though he had just learned to play. But, I mean, it's clear from his style and the simplicity of it that he was destined for a rock band like Bad Company, which is a lot more straightforward rock. That's what his style is suited for. It didn't really suit the complexity and the the depth of Crimson. And Ian Wallace, certainly a good drummer, but doesn't have the flavor of Michael Giles or of Bill Bruford for that matter. So not the coolest period, but I mean, he's a good drummer and he gets some extended solos on this. I will say it was fascinating listening to the extended Earthbound, which is almost 2 hours of audio. Rather than listen to it on my good speakers, I actually had a little Bluetooth speaker connected to my DVD player. And I just sat in my little bedroom and closed the door and put that speaker on the stand and just listened to that for 2 hours, just nonstop, just sitting there listening to it. And it was fascinating, almost like having a little transistor radio next to your side because of the sound quality. It added a little bit of a romance to it that kind of made me maybe imagine what it was like to be there and having been like recording the tapes myself or something. Overall, I do like the extended Earthbound. I think adding the extra tracks to it gives you a greater sense of what that band could do. In particular, I liked the Formentera Lady live version a lot more than the studio version. The Circus live version is fascinating because they take it very, very slow, much slower than the studio version. But Boz does a good job handling the vocals on that. And all of the versions of Sailor's Tale are just, I mean, Sailor's Tale, as I said, it is the standout track of the period. If there's one track between those 3 albums that really points the direction that Crimson was heading and just foreshadows their entire career, really, it's Sailor's Tale. That's the standout moment. In particular, that guitar solo is one of the best guitar solos ever, I think. It's so unpredictable, and yet it's controlled. Of the 3 sets, or the 4 sets I just reviewed, Lizard probably gives you the most in terms of like what the new remix offers in terms of content, but I would say this is actually probably the best buy just because you get the most stuff on it, including a better live overview of that Boz Burrell era band, which I don't think the original Earthbound album on its own gives you. The Summit Studios thing in particular is worth the money alone. I mean, just to hear them in a proper setting with good recording quality is great, and I love the mix. It's very in your face. It reminds me of some of the mixes of that Mark Wilder did of the Miles Davis live stuff, if you've heard any of that on Columbia. I'll do a deep dive into his career, talk about those box sets, which are fantastic and some of my prized possessions. But the mixing kind of reminds me of that. It just is right there in your face, big, crunchy, fat guitar sound that really jumps out at you. It's not hidden in the mix, and it doesn't leave anything to be desired. Like the actual sound quality of Summit Studios in quad and in stereo, I did listen to them both, is great. And so that alone is worth the money, but the extended Earthbound is cool too. And like I said, the idea behind Schizoid Man is cool, hearing the solos is cool. I just wish that they had actually ended it properly and made it feel like one big suite of a song. That would have been really cool to me, but just ending it abruptly seems kind of like a cop-out, if you ask me. So sorry, David Singleton, I didn't like what you did with that. I would have ended it properly, but that's my review of the Interregnum period, if you like. The period between the first King Crimson lineup and the classic 70s band, which would record their final 3 studio albums as well as the USA Live album. That's where we're headed next, and that's what I'm very excited for. I wanted to get through these 4 releases quickly so that I could move on to the stuff that I'm really excited for, starting with the Lark's Tongues and Aspect Complete Recording Sessions box set. Sorry, that'll come second. Complete Recordings box set, which has all the live stuff in it, and the 2012 mixes, and then the Atmos set, which I've listened to the Atmos mix and the new stereo and 5.1 mixes. I have not yet listened to the Complete Recording Sessions, so I'm interested in that, but I'm not the most excited for it. I'm more excited for the live stuff. That's what's coming up next. So we're back into the big box sets, and I have the next 4 big box sets in the Series 5, actually. And that's where I'll be in my journey, going through those 5 box sets until I get through Thrak, and then I'm back onto individual releases after that, as I don't have the Heaven and Earth box set either. So this period, probably the most turbulent and unbalanced in Crimson's history, but fascinating to hear it stage by stage like this with some additional material from each of the 4 albums. Definitely still gives an insight as to what was really up and not just what the buying public heard at that point. Earthbound in particular, of the 4 sets, this is the one that I would recommend you get the most, just because I think it gives you the most value for money. In terms of which ones benefit most from the remix, Lizard for sure. Islands is worth checking out just for Sailor's Tale and 5.1. Great 5.1 mix. The other two, nice to have, not essential, is my rating. In terms of what would I give this one? This one gets a 4 out of 5. This one gets a 3 out of 5, mostly for the album itself and the fact that there's not that much bonus material on it. 4 out of 5 because the bonus material is great, but again, the album itself, not my favorite. This one, 5 out of 5, just because of Live at Summit Studios and the extended tracks on Earthbound. Even though the sound quality of those extended tracks is not great, it's nice to have them. It gives a clearer picture of what King Crimson was up to during that time, even though the band had already imploded by that point and they knew they were going to break up at the end of that tour. Still a fascinating glimpse into what this particular band did. They didn't stay moving in this direction. Thankfully, they went way out left field with their next lineup and next album, which is really where I start to love the band a lot. But interesting piece of history, this. And that Summit Studios jam and quad is great to hear if you have a system that can play it. It really opens it up and shows that this band had a power of its own, even if it's not the same level of intensity and experimentation that was to come. Long review of this period, but those are my general thoughts on the Interregnum period and those 4 albums. So let me know in the comments if you have any of those releases. If you have the Sailor's Tale box set, what do you think of it? Is it worth having for all the extra live material from the Bosborough lineup and whatever extra studio materials in there as well that's not on this? If enough people tell me I should buy it, then maybe I will seek it out. But as of right now, I'm happy with just these 4 releases. Still gives you a good glimpse into the behind the scenes of those 4 albums, but without being a complete in-depth analysis like the big box sets are. So let me know your thoughts down below, and that's all for now. Bye.